Hello SLS 1101 students, this is your video walkthrough for your Module 2 Assignment 1 activity, and let's have a look and see what we have in store for us this week. Starting off with our schedule of activities, just to touch home base here and get a grasp of where we are starting off at. If you'll download this file, it will bring up your specific schedule of activities. Just a reminder that your due dates might change based on instructor and semester. We're moving on to Module 2 this week. We're on Module 2, Assignment 1, complete and submit the SLS time tracking chart assignment. And be sure to check for your specific due date for the course that you're currently enrolled in. Module 2 only has 3 study activities for the entire module, and we'll come back to Module 2 for next week's assignment as well whenever we use the information that we gathered this week for Module 2 Assignment 1. And what happens next week is you reflect on that information for Module 2 Assignment 2. So these two assignments very much so go hand in hand. That being said, let's get back into your Blackboard shell and have a look at Module 2 now for the first time this semester. If we open up Module 2, this should hopefully be looking more and more familiar to you in regards to what these different modules and activities look like. Here's your Module 2 overview. Be sure to have a read through those couple of paragraphs there, the objective as well. And then down below, you'll see something also familiar, a folder containing those 3 study activities we just saw, and those 2 assessments, one for this particular week and the other for the following assignment, which will come at a future date. Just to get a preview of what these study activities look like, you can see they're pretty short, sweet, and to the point. Make sure to read your Chapter 2 of your textbook, Keys to the College Success there. That will come in handy for the scheduling element from this week's activity. You have a personal values quiz inside of the textbook that you'll take and reflect on, as well as a TED Talk we have provided for you here inside the module. This is the link here for the textbook on page 30 for that self-assessment, and here is your TED Talk for the related video. So not too much in regards to study activities. Let's back it up a little bit and have a look at those assessments. If we scroll down into the second folder, remember your graded items will always be found here in the assessments. The study activities are kind of the building blocks that make up these graded assignments. So having a look, the first one we're going to isolate today and focus on for this week's due date is the Module 2 Assignment 1 SLS Time Tracking Chart Assignment. Kind of like your first assignment in this course, Module 1 Assignment 1, this assignment also has a template that you'll download and fill out. We'll have a look at that in just one moment. The most important thing about this assignment is right here, and it's that this assignment requires you to track your time for 4 straight days. So if you're the type of student that likes to wait until a day or two before the assignment is due to start the assignment, this is going to cause some trouble for you. So be sure to plan ahead. I would recommend at least 5 or 6 days. That way if you have an emergency or something comes up, you have some flexibility there. But you will have to track your time for 4 straight days for this assignment to be completed successfully. So I'll walk you through the steps on that. There's part 1, which is just directions, and all 4 of these parts will make more sense as soon as we download our template. Part 1 is the directions. Part 2 is that element where you are tracking your time for 4 days. You'll log how you spent your time right into this time tracking chart here. Part 3 is where you classify how you spent your time. You'll reflect back on all of the activities you did in Part 2, and you'll categorize them into any of these categories and code them accordingly. And again, that will make more sense once we download the file. And then lastly, considering what you identify as being your own personal values and your own personal goals, what you'll do for Part 4 here is you'll reflect back on how you spent your time, and you'll ask yourself, is that in alignment with your own personal values and your goals? And if it is, when you're making your schedule for the next week, it will probably look familiar to how you spent your time. But you might go through this part 2 and part 3 of your assignment here and realize that your values and the time that you're spending isn't in an alignment with each other. So whenever you finalize your last part of the assignment, part 4, you might find that you're making a much different schedule for yourself, maybe more time with family, more time with your classes, more time with volunteering. And that will vary based on the student. And we'll check out those instructions here in just one moment. Don't forget you've got your rubric here to make sure you're getting maximum points on your assignments, and we'll walk you through that one here in just a moment. But for now, let's have a look at the template so you get a better idea of what you're looking at here. You'll click the link, and that will download your template to an Excel file. I have this one downloaded already, so let's have a look. And we'll start with step 1. Step 1 just reiterates all of those instructions that are already found on Blackboard, so this is just another way to find what the instructions are asking you to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and then lastly step 4, which we just mentioned. All your steps, however, are down below on these tabs underneath the window. So you'll start with step 2 here, and this is where you will record how you're spending your time for those 4 consecutive days. So replace the 4 days here in these windows with the days that you're going to be recording your time. It might be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever fits into your schedule best before those due dates. So replace the day of the week, replace the date and the month, and then simply go through and start organizing how you are spending your time. Be as specific as possible. Be sure to read these directions to make sure that you are hinting on everything you're supposed to be touching on here. But fill all that in as specific as possible. It's not a bad idea to print this list out once you have it filled in, because the next thing you're going to do is move on to step 3, and that's where you code all of the items that you found on step 2. You categorize them into any of these specific coding categories. So for example, anytime you spent in class, you'll go up to your time frame up here and you're going to replace that block of time with a C. And as you start filling in these C's, you'll notice that the pie chart on the right hand side of the screen here will start to change because your class hours are going up. So once you've done categorizing all 4 days, you can look at your pie chart over here and see exactly where the bulk of your time is being dedicated to, and you'll see any small slivers which aren't being represented very heavily. So have a look at that. If you spend time working, you'll code that with a W. So say you start working at noon and you work a 4-hour shift here, that will affect onto your pie chart there. Be sure you don't have anything blank in here. If it doesn't match up to one of these categories specifically, go to the one that is the closest that it does. And you have to use these specific codes here, otherwise it won't populate our pie chart correctly. So make sure you're having a look at these codes, you're coding correctly, and it's all based on that information that you recorded in step 2. So step 2, you can code this however you'd like to. Be specific, you can put your specific classes if you'd like to, but once you get to step 3, you're taking that information, you're coding it into one of these categories and watching your pie chart grow as you input all of that data. That being said, once you finish coding all of your information, you'll look at your pie chart and you'll kind of reflect on what type of week that was for you. Was it something that you are proud to say that that's how you're spending your time, or do you have kind of an eye-opening experience when you realize that maybe your time isn't in accordance with the elements and the priorities that you have set for yourself? So that being said, the last step is to make your schedule for the next week. So you'll have a look at that. This follows a trait from your textbook, which starts with the classification 1 items. You'll read more about those. Those are priority 1. There's also, the textbook mentions priority 2 items, and lastly, the priority 3 items, which you should fill in lastly. Be sure to read the directions here. Fill in the dates of next week. So this will be how you intend to use your time for next week. Be sure whenever you are scheduling your time to be specific as possible. If you're studying, mention what class you're studying for. If you're studying for a test, make sure you're mentioning that test. If you're having class time, mention that. If you're volunteering, mention where, but be sure to be specific, so whenever you're following your schedule, and hopefully you will follow this schedule, it will help you be as successful as possible in a case like this. So have a look at that. Those are your 4 tasks here. Once you're done, be sure to save your work. You'll save that file, and that's what you'll upload for grading this week. Let's have a look at that. To submit your file whenever you're done, like always on Blackboard, you'll click the title of the assignment here. That will bring you to a Dropbox where you can upload your saved Excel file. Here's the assignment. Here's the point value. The directions again. Keep scrolling down. Browse your computer for your file. A side note while we're on this screen is there's never really a circumstance where you would need to text in any sort of submission directly in the Blackboard. Whenever you use that submission, it kind of messes up your formatting. It doesn't come across the way that students often want their work to be represented. To play it safe, you're best off always browsing your computer and composing your work in some sort of document file and uploading that. So in this case here, you browse your computer for the Excel file, upload it, agree to the conditions here, and then lastly submit for grading, and that will take care of that. Last thing I want to look at with you is the rubric. Here's another link for the rubric as well, but I have it downloaded on one of my tabs here. Here is the rubric pulled up for us. To get maximum credit, it's all just a matter of being specific. This is a very easy assignment to max out on. You go through and fill out all the information. Don't leave anything blank. Be specific whenever possible, and then just make sure you're being consistent. But you can see for full credit on part 1, they track all the required time, and they have specific activities, versus partial credit over here. It's not specific or realistic. There's some sort of inconsistency which doesn't make sense. So to get full credit, just be honest, just be specific. You'll get full credit on part 1. Part 2 is the coding here. Part 3, rather, that's the coding where you put in the letters to represent how you're spending your time. If you complete it all the way through and it's accurate, you've got full credit on this one. If you're missing parts and you have gaps in the areas that you're spending your time, you lose credit. And then lastly, for the final part, make sure that your 1 week schedule represents the priority items, specific activities, be specific, reflects time management and the strategies outlined in the study activities. So that's where you'll go back to those 3 study activities to make sure that this is in alignment with what you're learning as part of a successful routine related to the classwork we've been looking at together. Versus partial credit over here on this column, you can see it's generic. It doesn't reflect the study activities. So have a look at the rubric, but this is a nice assignment to get a full 25 points on. Be specific, have everything filled in, and of course, if you have questions, reach out to your instructor.